Esta última charla la va a dar Gershon Dublon, que trabaja con MUNTREF. Gershon es artista e investigador en tecnología, crea experiencias y sistemas que extienden la percepción humana, proponiendo nuevas sensibilidades del mundo. Las obras de Dublon han sido ampliamente expuestas, como en Electronica, en el Museo de Bellas Artes de Boston, el Festival Internacional de Datos. Sus textos han sido publicados en revistas como Presence and Scientific American, entre otras. Xin Liu, su compañera con quien trabaja en estos proyectos que él va a presentar, es también artista e ingeniera. Sus trabajos abarcan performances, dispositivos, instalaciones, experimentos científicos y también publicaciones académicas. En su práctica, Xin crea experiencias y artefactos para medir y modificar la distancia y tensión entre los espacios personales, sociales y tecnológicos. Xin también es curadora artística de la iniciativa de exploración espacial del Media Lab del MIT y también ha exhibido sus trabajos internacionalmente, como en Arts Electronica, el Sundance Festival, Film Festival, el Walker Art Center de OCAT Shanghai y ISEA también. En el 2018, Xin y Gershon fundaron Slow Immediate, un estudio de arte e ingeniería creativa que ganó la primera residencia de la Artificial Intelligence Lab que hacemos en MUNTREF, Centro de Ciencia y Arts Electronica, de la cual están actualmente ahora desarrollando aquí en Buenos Aires y continúa hasta el año que viene en Linz, en Austria. Así que bueno, gracias Gershon y los dejo.
Hola. Gracias, Mariano. Hola a todos. I'm Gershon Dublon. As Mariano mentioned, I'm talking today on behalf of myself and of Xin, who could not be here today. Right now, Xin is in Boston preparing to go on a parabolic zero-gravity flight for her second performance on one of those. But Xin will be here next week if you want to follow up with her in person. So you can ask me questions, but save some for her. We live and have our studio, Slow Immediate, together in New York City. That's us there working in the studio. In March, we were building a sculpture that we launched into space in May of this year. So we met as graduate students at the MIT Media Lab, where I did my PhD and Xin her master's. I have a background in electrical engineering and music, and Xin mechanical engineering and art. I'm very lucky to say that in addition to working together, we are also married and live together. So I'm a lucky person. And in the studio, however, we're artists who express ourselves through engineering, science, and technology as a medium. That's our sort of medium of expression in our work. So nowadays, technology leads us to trade one kind of immediacy, one kind of feeling of speed for another. It's the idea of everything that's on demand instead of everything on hand, everything quickly instead of everything we have around us. And to us, immediacy to ourselves and to the environment is critical to being terrestrial, to being human and sharing this planet. We explore this idea in artwork and projects that connect people to places and take apart or extend the self in different ways. So in this video from an installation in Mexico, DF, transducers buried underground are transmitting voices, ancestral voices, in Dia de los Muertos through the roots and branches of trees to people who lean against the tree and hear the voices inside. So how do we know ourselves? How are we sure who we are from one moment to the next moment? When we look in the mirror, how do you know that you are you? How do you know what you like or how the ones you love will make you feel? In this project called Mask, Xin developed a device that would listen to or detect your own breathing and produce a kind of false feedback, a false sound of another type of breathing. So imagine I take a long breath and this system produces a short one. And so we hear the sound of our breath all the time, 24 hours a day, and it tells us something about how we feel about where we are. Here I'm on a stage, a little bit more anxious than usual to present, some nervousness, and so my breath is shorter. But we found in studies that if you were to intervene in this feedback to produce a false sense of a longer breath, you could make someone feel more relaxed, in fact, to do better on an exam. At the same time, if you were to do the opposite, to make someone feel more aroused, to shorten their breath falsely, you could make them find someone else more attractive, because when you look at somebody, your own physiological response to that person actually determines how you decide you feel about that person. Okay, so mask is a sort of intervention, in a way a sinister intervention, looking inward to try and understand how the self is constructed. How about our perception of the outside world? How do we know our interconnected existence on this earth, even as we cause dramatic changes here? On this formerly industrial land in Massachusetts that's undergoing restoration, a group of us from MIT have been recording for the last 6 years hundreds of thousands of hours of sound, video, and sensors in the ground and in the air recording the soil and the climate. Here are some of the microphones that we build and install there, capturing bird calls and other wildlife as they return to this restored land. And with this headset, which we call Hear There, you can extend your hearing over kilometers through our networks of microphones, or travel through time through the historical record, through these recordings that we have, all the while as you explore the landscape. And we discover that forests are not always the quiet places that we thought they were, that our presence is actually what makes a forest quiet as the wildlife runs to hide. Here's just a quick video of people experiencing this.
As I move my head, I go from hearing the tree birds, and now I'm hearing more ducks and geese, and I put on my supersonic beam action, and now that's really all I'm getting.
There's that confusion between, is it coming from the headphones or is it coming from my ears? I hear crows. Do you hear them? So that must be the microphones.
I can really hone in. There must be one right there.
So I'm getting a sense of distant insects. Right there.
I can hear geese flying north as opposed to south, which is what they're doing right now.
Wind that's coming and going over there.
This is so cool, because I don't know, when I walk through the woods, I think I'm looking first and I'm listening second. Mm-hmm. So this is this is bringing listening. This is really cool.
So if I was here on a hot, humid day, I'd be hearing something different. Oh, that is nuts.
This is a tool for exploring a landscape.
Okay, and one last earthbound project before I take you to space. And the question is, how do we step from our perspective as humans or from our own bodies into the body of another being to feel ourselves in someone else? Our research on a phenomenon called the body ownership illusion is the basis for this experience in a virtual reality film. In the film, you take the perspective of a seed growing into a tree, all the way to the top of the forest. And when you move your arms, the branches move. When a bird lands on your arm, you feel the sensation at exactly the same spot in the same moment. And at the end of the film, when the humans arrive to clear the forest through fire, you first see some flickering lights, and then you smell some smoke, and you start to feel the ground shaking, and then you start to feel the heat coming towards you. And here the film presented at the Sundance Film Festival where the experience of people at the end removing this virtual reality goggles is one of having gone through an experience like death, like to have experienced growing from a seed to dying by fire. Okay, so from the inner self to the outside world and to another body, and then to the question, how do we extend ourselves, physical and emotional selves, over great distances and over time? Living distance is a fantasy and a mission in which a wisdom tooth, Sheen's wisdom tooth, is sent to outer space and comes back to Earth again. I'll talk a little bit about how the project came about, how we made it, what we did, and then I'll show maybe some of a short video work that is in production, an art video from this project. To provide some context, the first performance in zero gravity. 2 years ago, Sheen had her experience on a parabolic flight over Florida. Floating there, detached from anything for the first time and holding a mechanical device in her hand, Sheen projects a tether, attaches herself, and pulls herself forward through space. Here is astronaut Ed White, the first American to step out of a spacecraft. Floating there, his life hangs by a umbilical cord, and as he returned to the craft, he said it was the saddest moment of his life. So partnering with the MIT Media Lab and Blue Origin, our sculpture Ibiza was launched into suborbital space inside of a single payload, experiencing the microgravity environment above 100 kilometers. So carried by a crystalline robotic sculpture, the tooth departs Earth, and its journey tells the story of one person in the universe, that life moves in circles, we keep walking, running forward, and we end up again back home. The wisdom tooth passage into space is like a newborn entering another world, its body enclosed in this glass skin, and its life supported by this electromechanical system. And like Sheen's orbit weaver, the robot shoots threads out and drags itself through space, moving like a spider that's ballooning in the air. Each of these cylinders contains a very small amount of gunpowder, about 20 milligrams, and a tiny capsule of compressed air. One layer just below the cylinders, a handmade reaction wheel spins at 6,000 rotations per minute, stabilizing the sculpture as it floats there and giving it the possibility to orient itself as it pulls itself through space. Here, the robot disassembled. There's an old Chinese tradition, which is that when a kid loses a tooth, if it was a top tooth, you bury it in the ground. But if it was a bottom tooth, you toss it up to the ceiling as high as you can. I'll just show you a few pictures of the process of developing this object. To have a kind of space program in an art studio is not a small feat. We're a very small team, 2 of us plus 2 more people that joined us to help, and a constellation of others taking photographs and documenting as we went through this process. The mechanical, the electrical, the calculations, the tests. To ensure that the system would survive abnormal conditions of the launch. The explosions. And how do you release something in 0 gravity without providing it any initial velocity? And to do this all when this object is 100 kilometers away from you and you have no contact with it. In reality, it's a matter of writing firmware, developing these choreographies at dawn in the morning on your way through the desert to launch this device into space. The final touches before we deliver the device, and the final moment. And on May 2nd, the sculpture flew on board Blue Origin's latest flight to suborbital space. And then shortly after, it came back to Earth again. Here's a moment of it floating in 0 gravity, 100 kilometers above the Earth. And back on the ground when we started to take documentation. The first moments watching the video of what occurred inside of the spacecraft. Celebration. Okay, and now I wanted to play a very kind of artistic representation, an expression of this whole event in a 2-channel video that's really about creating a space between this mission, the sort of technical aspects of the production of this mission, and this fantasy.
Morning begins with a shower, a shatter, and blast off. I remember the moment the surgeon placed my wisdom teeth in my hand. 2 teeth in the palm of my hand like lucky dice. Morning, water pours fast and hard, waking my body. I want to cry out in pleasure or shock or joy or both shock and joy every day. Water at the same perfect heat. My own teeth. Water soaks my head, my shoulders, pores. I shook them in my face just a little for luck, because it was luck every day. Water at the same temperature. I held my teeth. I wasn't sure what to do with them. Grandma told me to talk them high. Higher, she said. 下指掉了要往上扔，扔到屋顶上。I've switched to a soap that melts slowly. What would I do with them? Even my tongue wondered how to harbor their absence. I suffered nightmares as a child. Teeth, the hardest part of the body. All my teeth falling out, containing so much DNA memory. A dream is another vessel. I wanted the rocket to take my tooth into space. First of me to go this distance. And the body, another vessel. A rub with oil from the desert. Truth is, gravity never disappears. Tooth spinning, everything falling together. A free fall dance, the daily ceremony, that's it. Amen. On earth and in outer space. Despite the distance between Earth to outer space, despite the Milky Way's 100,000 light years, despite the emptiness, comets, and dust, there is soundlessness here, harmonic in deep space. Despite the distance of the blue planet, we come down, the rocket blazes, engines pause. Now we sing like birds, breathing cedar air. We're made of dust and light. With the distance between us, with everything far away and unknown, with unfathomable distance and the longing I feel, the sense I have we're alone. Despite the clicking instruments, humming clocks, despite the body dressed for outer space, mechanical ropes, clasps, stays, straps. You're in free fall, I spake. Dear X chromosome, I have the sense we're alone, found in ordinary cells, yet singular, unique. X makes the woman, heart, breast, womb. Why there is all this space inside me, I don't know. Kidney, pancreas, stomach, spleen, our 100,000 miles of wings, close and unfathomable, a universe unknown. It takes 3 days to reach our moon. Despite knowing we might be alone, despite the ways we sought for X, my arms and legs outstretched. Asian mothers live inside this X. Despite the sense I have we're alone, X chromosome, mothership, mitochondria, everything far away, distant, and unknown. We're expanding faster and farther. Along with the Asian mother in my cells, along with the X repeating in our rocket ship. Is there a message from deep space? Nameless harmony I feel inside.
So I won't add too much to the film. I think it speaks for itself. But just to close out the talk and explain why we're here now, is that in an arc from the making and unmaking of the self and into the kind of metamorphosis through this extraterrestrial wisdom tooth, we arrive here at the notion of planetary perception, that from deep inside to as far out as we know, that you are, as Alan Watts famously said, you are the universe experiencing itself. This universe of experience is contained within this biofilm of the atmosphere that's shared by us terrestrials. And so we begin this year-long project called The Wandering Mind, commissioned by Ars Electronica and the European Artificial Intelligence Lab. And the idea is to expand the audience's individual senses of self to encompass larger parts of the Earth's ecosystem. And we do this by connecting the body to these vast networks, terrestrial and planetary networks of remote sensing that we have here, viewing the planet from space and viewing the planet from the ground, from our perspective. We'll be here for the month of August, and our idea is to make as many connections as possible here to carry forward through the next year. So please come and talk to us, and I'd love to talk to people one-on-one as long as I'm here, if anybody. Thank you.